Very good evening, sir. The topic of my seminar is airborne wind energy, or we can say flying windmills. I chose this topic as it was very new to me, and I never imagined that there exists a technology in which a windmill will be flying. So it was very fascinating, and I know many people don't know about it as this technology is still in process. And also this thing is is very beneficial and a very good alternative to the conventional windmill. So we will be going through these topics. Introduction. The present day conventional windmills have many drawbacks that we will be studying in the further slides. The world is moving towards renewable energy production as a reliable means to answer the increasing demands of power and a clean globe environment. So in this presentation of seminar, we will be discussing the limitations and the disadvantages of conventional windmills and how the flying windmills will be able to overcome these problems. And is the flying windmills is a need of the hour? So that we will be discussing. Why renewable energy? So, as you can see in these pictures, that nuclear, oil, and coal power plants are producing a lot of pollution, smoke, noise, which is hazard to our planet and even for us. So that's why we are moving towards renewable energy, because renewable energy is the need of the hour. Why wind energy? Wind energy, as we know that it is a renewable source of energy. It reduces dependency on fossil energy supply as fossil energy is limited. It is non renewable energy. Now it contributes to a healthy environment. Yes, wind energy does not affect the planet. It does not produce harmful things. It is also cost effective energy solution. Yes, it is not that costly. Now this is the distribution of wind energy in India. These wind farms are all situated on the coastal areas, as we know that wind currents are stronger in those areas. Now this is a layout of conventional windmills. As you can see in this picture, wind is moving the blades of the rotor, which is spinning the generator, and the electricity is generating. So the electricity is transferred to the power storage, which is further utilized. This is a very basic layout of conventional windmill. Now here comes the disadvantage of the conventional windmill, which will tell us that why there is need to go for flying windmills. So first, there's not always enough winds, whereas at higher altitudes wind conditions are much smoother, better, and almost constant. So it is very good for flying windmills. Second, there is negative impact on birds as they got killed and injured through blades of conventional wind turbines, rotating blades. Yes, thousands of birds got hurt or injured or got killed by the rotating blades of wind turbines. It causes a lot of hazard to the birds. Now it also causes loss to the habitat of wildlife due to the disturbance coming from the noise, electromagnetic fields, and many things, which is creating a lot of losses to the wildlife. Now, many potential wind farms where energy can be produced on a large scale are far away from places where energy is needed. For example, Jaisalmer is a large wind farm, but that place is very less crowded and it takes long transmission lines to transport energy, which affects it economically. So, in case of flying windmills, they can be carried wherever we want to produce electricity. So, it is a very good thing for transportation of flying windmills. Now, turbines creates a lot of noise, leads to noise pollution, and one cannot only depends on wind as it is unpredictable. Now, this is an also important disadvantage of conventional windmills, that it occupies a lot of land. Now, in case of flying windmills, it does not requires land as it is just tied to the tether. So it requires a very little bit of land. So we can use that land for some other purpose. What are flying windmills? Now here comes the most important topic, that what are the flying windmills? It is a windmill similar to a conventional one in its working principle, but here the rotor and the generator will be floating in the air just like a hot air balloon. The generator will be enclosed in an inflatable structure, and this structure is held by a tether and tied to the ground. Canadian engineer Fred Ferguson specialized in airships. It proposed an innovative system called as Megan air rotor system, also called as Mars. So it was different from other windmills because it does not use propeller blades. It uses a helium blimp. Helium blimp is a balloon which is filled by helium, and it with Savory's style scoops, causing it to rotate around motors. Now, the helium-filled Mars is a bion turbine made up of Vectrin. Vectrin is a bulletproof material that is stronger than steel. This Mars can be raised to heights of 300 to 1000 feet to take advantage of the more constant and higher wind speed at higher altitudes that conventional wind turbines are unable to reach. Why need of height for wind energy? Now we are talking that height is necessary. Why it is necessary? Now, friction generated by roughness of earth's surface will reduce the speed of wind by creating mechanical eddies that transport momentum towards the ground where it diminishes. So near the ground friction will be more. Speed will reduce by generation of mechanical eddies. So increase in height will decrease the effect of friction. So wind speed increasing with height. This image is telling this. Now, this is also showing the relationship between wind speed and height. As you can see, the windmill is so at very much height than conventional windmills. Now, the velocity and power relation. Now you can see that power is inverse, is directly proportional to the cube of wind speed. So as we increase the wind velocity, the power will increase by its cube. So it is very high. Classification of airborne wind turbines. So there are four airborne wind turbines: ground based, onboard, multiple, and lighter than air system. Now ground based power generation, it, as the name says, the generation will be on the ground. It does not need high voltage electrical power transmission because it does not the tether will not transmit that power, because the generation will be already the generation of electricity will take place on the ground itself. So it directly uses the strong tether tension to unroll the tether from the drum, and the rotating drum drives an electric generator. But in this case, one had to be periodically retract the tether for continuous operation. Now, the second is onboard power generation. In an onboard power generation, electrical energy is produced on the kite or balloon, and it is transmitted to the ground via a special rope which carries electric cables. Now, onboard power generation produces electric power continuously while in operation, except during takeoff and landing maneuvers in which energy is consumed. Now in see, this is onboard power generation. In this, the wind will be passed through the rotor. The rotor will move. The rotor will spin the generator. The generator will transmit the electricity through the conducting tether. The tether will the tether will the transmit the electric energy to the winch, and it goes to the transformer where it amplified it and goes to the power grid, and at last it will be distributed to all of us. Now there comes the multiple wing system. Now in this, there is a tether drag which is an obstacle for higher gliding numbers. So it is beneficial to have short tethers. But if we have short tethers, then how would we will reach to high altitudes? So for this reason, some concepts use multiple kites to decouple the two rolls of the tether by introducing two sorts of tether. First is the primary tether that allows the air wind energy system to reach altitudes, and second is the primary tethers which will attach to the end of the primary tether and connect it with kites. So in this image, The long string is the primary, which will help them to reach to altitudes, and this primary is attached with two secondary, which will help them to balance well. Now, fourth is the lighter than air system. This is a very lighter air system. This will be made very light, and it is filled with helium. Uh, this is make the advantage of this system is that in the absence of wind, it will stays in the air and without any power consumption. So this is the most advantage of this system, and that Mars Magnum air rotor system is an example of lighter than air system. See, this is how it is made, and it is suspended in the air by a tether. Now, lifting mechanism, how it is lifted. So helium sustains the Megan air rotor systems, which ascends to an altitude as selected by the operator for the best winds. Its rotation also generates the Magnus effect. This aerodynamic phenomena provides additional lift, keeps the Mars device stabilized, positions Mars with a very controlled and restricted location, and finally causes Mars to pull up overhead to maximize altitude rather than drift downwards on its tether. Now Mars is filled with helium gas, which is inert and non-flammable. The lifting gas creates a lift force that is excess of the total weight of the system. Helium provides at least twice the positive lift versus the overall weight of the Mars. So additional lift is also created when the rotor is spinning in the wheel. That additional lift is the aerodynamic effect, which is called as the Magnus effect. Now what is Magnus effect? The effect was discovered in mid 1800s that creates lift when a spherical or cylindrical object is spun while moving in a fluid. So this is Magnus effect. So the combined lifting effect from buoyant helium lift and aerodynamic Magnus lift helps stabilize the air rotor against leaning in the wind. In an air rotor went straight up and held a near vertical position in various wind speeds, since the Magnus effect increases as the wind speed increases. This is the picture showing Magnus effect. Now this is how it is how the balloons are filled with the helium gases working. Now as the rotor of the windmill rotates due to high velocity wind, it produces very high torque. Now there is a step up reduction gearbox which connects the lower speed shaft to the higher speed shaft and converts the lower rotational speeds from 30 to 60 rotations per minute to about 1200 to 1500 rpm. The wind turns the turbine which spins the generator, and the electricity is generated. This electricity is sent to the ground by the tether and can be consumed readily, stored in batteries, and can be used to later work. Now these are the parts. Now this is the performance of Mars. Specifications of 4 kilowatt air turbine. It gives a very good result with a very less cost is required. It is very cheap. Transmission cost is very less than the conventional. It is very cheap than conventional, and it produces more 6 to 10 times more energy than the conventional wind turbines. Now advantages: low cost electricity, less than rupees 5 per kilowatt, bird and bat friendly, lower noise, wide range of wind speed, higher altitudes from 200 to 800 feet above ground levels are possible without expensive towers or cranes. Few limits or placement location, ability to install closer to the power grid, ideal for off-grid application or where power is not reliable. They do not require land, wide roads, and heavy machinery for assembly. Mars unit removes these limitations because the units do not require cranes or special roads for installation. Now the disadvantages: Mars cost cannot be installed within 5 miles of the boundary of any airport. It cannot be installed near airports. Initial cost is high. Another disadvantage of floating windmills is that they have to be taken down in extremely powerful winds, whereas common wind turbines are simply shut down. Now the applications, they can be used in mine sites, remote exploration, remote islands, And even in hilly areas where we cannot install the conventional windmills, there also we can use these flying windmills, because in hilly areas the wind speeds are high, and due to we cannot use the bigger conventional windmills, so we can use them there. Off grid for cottages and remote use, such as cell towers and exploration equipment. Developing nations where infrastructure is limited. Rapid development to disaster areas for power to emergency and medical equipment, water pumps and relief efforts, and military applications. Thank you. Stay safe. Jai Hind.